Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to our Wednesday night live stream. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by the young prodigy, fellow Lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel, and also the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my man Jeff Howe, joining us as well. So appreciate all you guys for joining us out there, no matter where you're joining us from. We appreciate all of you guys. You know how it works. You guys can drive the show wherever you want to, any direction you want to. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. We've also got a couple of topics we want to get into. The latest commitment for the Longhorns in the 2026 class. We'll talk about that. Max Wright is his name. We'll get into that commitment here from CJ and Jeff about it. Also, a note about Justice Terry from our own Jerry Hamilton. Very interesting note about where they expect to start his development on that defense. We'll talk about that too coming up a little bit later on in the show. Also, there are some over under win totals that are out. We got to get to those coming up a little bit later on. There's also the nugget from about Ohio State. They have finally, I think, announced and made it official, even though a lot of people speculated that Brian Hartline would be named and promoted as the new offensive coordinator. That is the case that has been confirmed. So we'll talk about that too coming up, because the Longhorns have to face the Ohio State Buckeyes to start the 2025 season. All right, gentlemen, let's get right to it. You guys know how we start with the 2026 class, which I think is right now a top 10 class because of their latest commitment. Looking way, obviously too early at that 2026 class. Longhorns get a commitment from an offensive lineman, a huge, big human, as the Longhorns like to say. He is 6'8", out of Mission, Texas, Max Wright. CJ, what can you tell us about the latest commitment from the Longhorns?
Yeah, he's a big body, I'll tell you that. 6'6.5", 6'7". We'll round it up to 6'7". Lengthy wingspan. I don't know if we have his commit photo, but I mean, when you see him put his arms out, that thing looks pterodactyl-ish. So that's one of the big key traits for him. He's only about 285, 290 pounds at the moment, so plenty of room to grow. Of course, he's going into the offseason of his junior year. Next year will be his senior campaign. I expect him to get close to 295, maybe 300 if you're lucky. But that first year on campus, I know Jerry, Jeff, Bobby, a lot of guys, when they reference, Florida athletes or athletes that come from East Texas that maybe haven't had a whole lot of weight training, they blow up the minute they get on campus. I look at Max Wright very much the same. And I know Melissa has a great strength and conditioning program over there, but this is a body that's just ready to explode when it comes to just the physical stature. I think he'll get up to 320, 325 by the end of his playing days. He could play guard, he could play tackle, but again, that wingspan is really, really impressive. A lot of developmental, traits still to learn down the road. But right now, it should give you a pretty high indication of how, Kyle Flood views Max Wright. For him to be the first offensive lineman given the green light publicly to go out there, make his commitment, with as many in-state guys that we've talked about, with a Felix Ojo, a John Turntine, plenty of other options, a Samuel Roseborough. This is a really important get for Texas, and it sets a good base for the floor, I think, of this class when you consider how many guys Texas want to take. This is a guy that they can develop and mold into their liking.
Yeah, if this is a 6-0 line class, then this is just a good, solid take to start with Max Wright. You know me, Rod, I like guys that have the ability to play tackle, that they've got the body to play tackle. He's got some things probably, to refine some things, for a guy 6'7" at that level. Obviously pad level is not going to be ideal. So that's going to be a lot of hip work, a lot of core work. But, I love the fact that this regime has finally gotten Texas out of that vicious cycle where they were having to play true freshman offensive linemen early because there was no options. I mean, I'd like to think of, man, if a guy like Patrick Vahe or Kent Perkins, you just go down the list of guys that could have gotten an extra year had they not been thrown to the wolves because there was nobody else to play that position when they were freshmen. Max Wright, even when you do have some attrition after spring ball, which we all expect there to be online attrition, he's still going to be in a position where, he's going to be able to sit and develop. And, the old school red shirts really don't exist anymore. But I think for offensive line, that's probably the one position, Rod, maybe interior defensive line, where you can still have that, where you realize that, hey, they're not on the travel squad. They're going to get that extra lift in during the week or whatever it is. Make sure they get to the training table, making sure they're scout team guys. So I just like the fact that you've got a tackle body, a guy that's got a relatively high floor, and in an all-line class where you're going to take 6, I've got no problem with Max Wright being one of your 6.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm with you. You want your O-line ideally to be at the point where only a prodigy can start early. Would you know? I mean, like a Kelvin Banks, of course. Obviously, he's just the best player you got. He'll be drafted in the first round. Those kind of guys, yeah, they can start early. But for the most part, I'm with you. It's more of a developmental thing. Get those guys with a nutrition, dietitian, get them with the strength and conditioning program for a year or so, get that grown man body and get their strength up, get their conditioning up, and then those guys start working on their technique and actually their on the field play. So I'm with you. I think that is the case for a couple of positions. It's harder these days, the transfer portal, but ideally Texas has done a great job of being able to keep those guys on campus so that they can really be in a kind of really immersed in the strength and conditioning program, the nutrition program. And we've seen, obviously, Trevor Goosby is kind of a good example. And we're hoping now with the 4 starters that you'll see the fruits of that come to fruition this year, materialize that, hey, these guys have been in the program. They've been, conditioning. They've been with the strength and conditioning coach. The bodies are right now, and now they're ready to play at the highest level. So I'm with you on that. So great. All of these guys should be considered developmental projects, unless, as Jeff kind of mentioned, you got a prodigy on your hands, and that's always a good problem to have, right? If you got to get that guy.
I'll back up what CJ said too, Rod. He's a lean. I think he was 287. CJ Junior Day is what they got him at, and he's a very lean 287. So he's on the lighter side of guys Kyle Flood would take, but he's going to be a 310, 315 in no time, and probably could be a guy that, depending on how he carries it, could play at 320, 325 in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I was going to say that would still look light on the guy that's 6'7".
Mm-hmm. That's Trevor Goosby currently, right? Because I think he was listed at 315, 317 in that range. He still looks pretty nimble, right? Pretty slim for a guy that big. But I mean, you carry that weight, and at the end of the day, you look at it, you say, well, he's still 317 pounds. Like that's not nothing. But the body shape certainly allows for it to look much slimmer and, of course, build up as his career goes. I don't know what Trevor Goosby's going to end his career at, but Jeff, again, I think that Max Wright could be a guy that ends up in that 320, 325 range. And I think you won't lose much of that lateral quickness or burst off the ball in that instance. One of the big takeaways I took from that huddle that we were showing just now, thank you, Matthew, by the way, getting off the ball and moving people in the run game for a guy that big and there's still some, technique refining that he needs to go through, but just making sure the hips are low enough to move bodies up in front of him in the run game. It's a tough thing to do that early in your development as an offensive lineman. He had pretty good, I would say, movement of other bodies in that run game. It was encouraging.
Hard to get pad level when you're 6'7". Pad level, right? Pad level matters in the run game so much. Jeff, as you know more than I do, because you're a lineman, but I just imagine that's one of the challenges of a 6'7" guy. And that's probably why it's more important for him to have the hand placement right, or to make sure the hips are, obviously anchored down correctly, all those little technique things. So I think, to me, the next phase, the big humans, I love the Big Human Project. All the Longhorns, I put it on T-shirts. Everybody knows that's Sark's, his motto for building the trenches. Big humans, right? We all love that. Well, on the O-line, now I want big humans that can move humans. I need big. So now you got your big humans, and they're great because they're athletic, and we saw that the last 3 years with Sark and this regime. But now I want big humans that can move humans, and I think that's what kind of CJ's talking about. Yeah. You saw a little bit of that ability. And we're hoping that's going to be the case with this new crop of starting O-linemen with Texas this year. Yeah,
he's going to have to work on sinking his hips and doing some of those things, and that'll come as, again, he builds hip flexibility and core strength and things like that at Texas. But CJ hit the nail on the head. At the high school level, if you're 6'7", most of the edge guys you're playing are 6 foot, 6'1", and you talk about, I know Rod as a defender, you talk all the time when we talk targeting about the strike zone where you've got to tackle a guy. Man, if your objective as an offensive lineman is to get your hands inside on someone's breastplate, that strike zone for a 6'7" guy on a 6-foot guy is really hard to get to. I mean, you got to really sink your hips and get into it. So that's why I don't think, some people might hear me and CJ say, project or developmental guy and think it's a knock. No, like I said, there are things just that the body cannot naturally. You see a lot of high school guys that are 6'7" that can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So that tells you how far ahead Max Wright is. But I'm with you, Rod. You got big humans. Now, can you get big humans that can move people?
Hey, Jeff, let me ask you this, because Texas getting its 2026 offensive line group started. We've seen plenty of recruiting classes on the offensive line since Flood and Sark took over. Obviously, that one with DJ Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Cole Hudson, that's kind of the gold standard. What excites you about this group of 26s in the state, whether Texas is looking to bring them in for official visits? Because to me, it's, again, just a lot of big bodies, but a lot of talented athletes that kind of carry over what we've seen sporadically with the Brandon Baker or Nate Kibble, the Coleman brothers. It's very much the trend. But this year specifically, feels like you're seeing a whole lot more of them, and Texas is in on a ton of them in the state of Texas.
You got variety, in this class. Like John Turntine is going to be your athletic. I don't care how tall he is. He's going to be your athletic left tackle. Max Wright, again, a project tackle body, developmental tackle body, like we talked about. Nicholas Robertson, he's an interior guy all the way, a guard all the way, but, kind of got a really unique body type. And I think once he redistributes some weight, could be a 335, 340, road grader type. Same thing with Toa Katoa at 374, 375, and carries it very well. And I'm intrigued by a guy like Zayden Crimpin, a guy that's got the potential to play safety. I like the fact that Kyle Flood isn't saying, okay, I've got to have a center or I've got to have a left tackle. Hey, let me get a guy that could potentially play both tackle spots and we'll figure out where he goes. Let me get a guy that maybe if he's a tackle, I can project him to kick inside, or maybe I can start him inside and kick him out. And let me get a guy. I don't want just a center. I want a guy that can give me some positional flexibility, that can cross-train at either guard spot and be a center. So in that realm, Rod, our two worlds, offensive line and defensive back, aren't that different when you start talking about cross-training. You're just looking for to manufacture as much depth as you can.
Totally agree. And Jeff, honestly, I'll add on to it because I love where you're going. I think the hive-minded approach that you have to have at both of those positions, I have to be really in tune and have to work as a unit more so than a lot of other positions. The DBs do. If one guy's down the same page, just like O-line, whole damn coverage is blown. Right, because one guy was off and one guy wasn't handling responsibility. Same thing could happen on the O-line. Just one guy's off, blows up the whole thing, and it looks like chaos. So I'm with you. I agree with that, brother. I'm with you. That's why we vibe, man. O-line DBs, baby. And O-line also the smartest of the offensive positions too. I've been told that.
We're the smartest position on the field, Rod, other than quarterback.
And I will say, honestly, my thing is this. I think a lot of great coaches have DB backgrounds. I think you only get a lot of great coaches, and they were DBs back in the day. A lot of great ones.
Landry.
I'm just saying. I just throwing it out. I think Kirby Smart was a DB. Nick Saban. Just saying, DBs, man. You get the hive-minded. Something about the football acumen and the intellect. DBs, quarterbacks, O-line. I ain't saying nothing about everybody else. You know what I mean? I think those would be the smartest positions on the field. I'm sure there's a wide receiver that would disagree. Yeah, exactly. Saban DB, Kirby DB. I always thought DBs, man, among the smartest out there. Of course, I think that.
That's one thing I really like about this Texas offensive line that we just cycled through, the Jeg Majors, Hayden Connor offensive line. They got a lot of smart guys up front. I mean, guys, it was the right mix of guys who were experienced. They played a lot of football together. And, Jeg Majors was an academic All-American. Hayden Connor, I think, what was he, an aerospace engineering major? Kelvin Banks, a very smart, bright kid. So, your smart guys are going to be on the offensive line typically.
Yeah. No, I that's been I agree with that too. Speaking of smart guys, actually, you know what? And I feel bad because they've been talking about the DBs are smart, O-line smart. running back is pretty smart too, and so is Dr. Brett Robin, former running back at Texas, lifetime Longhorn. He may be the exception to the rule, so running backs may not be smart, but Dr. Robin certainly smart because right now he is one of the great orthopedic specialists in Central Texas at the Austin Orthopedic Institute, and want to thank him for sponsoring our Wednesday night live stream. My former teammate know the man very well. Matter of fact, I need to go see him. I keep saying that, but I'm actually true about that because I got some shoulder issues that keep popping up after my 3 shoulder surgeries, and I'm sure Dr. Robin can help me out. Former Longhorn running back, lifetime Longhorn. He knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements if necessary. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients right now, including, so if you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call today. Please do it, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. Thanks to Dr. Robin. We appreciate him. My man, Brett Robin. I'm sorry I didn't mention running backs in case you're watching, Dr. Brett Robin. But you're the exception. I'd say you always been pretty smart. I remember back in the day. So even back then, he was spitting game on the 48, dropping the science, dropping the knowledge.
Along with being a product of the University of Texas, Brett Robin, that Eanes ISD education being a product of Westlake High School also helps.
Come on now. That is true. That's one of the best high schools in the country now. That's no doubt about that. That's real. All right. And producing top-notch athletes, even way back then. Producing top-notch. We had 2 of them. We had Adam Hall, I believe, was the Westlake too, right?
You played briefly with Ryan Nunez, was the Westlake guy.
Oh, yeah. Nunez could go too, man. Nunez could fly. He was one of those. Just because he's a white dude out there, you thinking, oh man, he can run right past you too. You better get right, better open them hips up. No, I hope Nunez is doing well. Yeah, man, it's crazy that even back then there was a strong Westlake influence.
Yeah,
early on the team, and now still that is obviously still the case, as it should be. All right, we'll get to some of the other topics. I want to talk about Justice Terry a little bit. Nice nugget by my man Jerry Hamilton, always dropping great nuggets on the OTF site. He dropped a nugget on OwenTexasFootball.com that I want to bring up here about Justice Terry. But first, let's hit some questions. The super chat here from Jacob Watley. Watley, yes, says hooker from Carthage, Texas. Always a great day to be a Longhorn. Appreciate that, Jacob. And thank you very much for the super chat. You're damn right. Feels good to be a Longhorn. Feels good to be talking about these first world problems. You know what I mean? Like, what it's going to take for Texas to get to the national title game. You know what I mean? Like, what's holding Texas back from winning it all? Oh, how many guys can Texas have drafted? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 12? How many guys going to have to invite to the combine? 15 guys? I mean, these are the type of conversation we want to have instead of me screaming and yelling about, coaching ineptitude and lack of development and bad culture. I'm not screaming about this. I was less screaming. I've done probably the least amount of screaming and yelling about Texas football in the last 2 years than I've done since I've covered the team since 2009, 2008, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. I've been, usually I've been ranting and raving. These last couple of years, I don't have that much to scream about. I've noticed that. You know what I mean? So I got to thank Coach for that. I got first world problems now, guys. I'm crying from a yacht, as Sark would say.
The ranting rod got to a point probably midway through the Charlie Strong era where you just became numb to the ineptitude, and it's like, well, why am I even going to work myself up by getting mad right here?
Oh man,
yeah. One of those maybe we'll block for a PAT next year moments,
Oh man, getting the coin, screwing up the coin toss, stuff like that. Oh man.
I don't have to worry about Sark is going to headbutt anybody pregame. It's nice.
Double birds, something like that. I mean, come on. We did have that 2021 season, which was wild with the monkey and all that kind of stuff. That was a crazy season with the Bo Davis.
The parking lot. I mean.
Hey, you know what?
Look, that's like everything that has happened in the Sark tenure for the most part. Like that chapter of the 21 season would be just as long as from 22 to now. So I think you take that in terms of some of the off-season non-football related stories that we've been talking about. Smooth sailing right now.
That's true. I did some yelling during 2021 season. That was some yelling and screaming then. But now looking back, it's just more. Good job, CB. CB always knows how to put it into the correct description, the correct term. UTMZ. That's exactly what we were for the 2021 season. It was wild. It was crazy.
Can I tell you that's the rock bottom moment for me? Like it was in the 2021 season, and I'm sitting at a Permanente Brothers in the Pittsburgh metro area eating a sandwich, and I'm writing a Sunday column after the West Virginia game. Texas went on the road, lost to West Virginia. It was their seventh loss. They're not eligible for a bowl. And I'm watching TV, and I just got done watching the Texas game, and it's a split. ESPN's talking about one thing, and FS1's talking about another, and they're talking about the Knicks on one channel and the Cowboys on the other. And I'm thinking, this is the same thing. Like, we sit here talking about this team, this program. They don't ever win anything. We talk about them for all the wrong reasons. They're relevant just because it's almost a joke that they're relevant. How are they relevant? I'm like, that's kind of where Texas is, and they got to get out of this. And thankfully, that rock bottom moment, they emerge from that because they go beat Kansas State to end that season, and then they go 8-5, and you're off and running. So that West eating that sad sandwich was rock bottom for me, Rod.
That K-State game is underrated. Now looking back in retrospect, right? Because that team had every reason to just, mail it in, to just just give up on that season, and they didn't. Because even that game was an ugly game, right? You had a lot of injuries at quarterback and running back. The team had every reason to just kind of give up on the season. They weren't going to make a bowl game. It was all about pride. And by then, I think the guys who were bought in, they were like, all right, we're in. I mean, this is the way it is. We gotta try to, end it on a good note so we can start on a better note next season. And Sark coached his butt off in that game.
You remember?
It went Wildcat. Like what? Like basically, I think it's Wildcat like 18, 19 times they ran the Wildcat. Over and over.
The moment though, Rod, when Sark had it, Sark's like, F this moment. It was right after Will Howard ran off for that 70-yard touchdown.
I remember that.
None of the 11 guys on defense did their job right. You go back and watch that play. 11 guys were on the field. 11 guys screwed up. And there were a few guys that were on that play that's the last time we saw him in a Texas uniform. We didn't see him after that. And you saw a lot more Ja'Day Barron, started seeing a lot more Barron Sorrell at the end of that game, a lot more Byron Murphy, a lot more Jalen Ford. I think that was the moment when Sark was like, you know what, I'm done. Screw it. Get the young guys in there. I'm tired of watching some of you guys.
It was a very important moment now looking back. I agree with you on that. All right. Sorry to bring y'all down. We didn't mean to do that. Let's get back to the super chats.
CJ's looking like he's like reliving it all over again. So
I know. We didn't mean to bring people back there. Let's see if I can throw his hat. All right. Juan, thank you for the super chat. He said, what do you all think of the Jonte news? Was he like this at DeSoto? Did Texas misevaluate? Your thoughts? Yes, he recently it was reported that there was an arrest. He was arrested on a couple of charges there in, I believe, in the DFW area somewhere as well. So what are you guys' thoughts? I'm sure he'll handle the legal. I don't think it's anything serious. So I think he'll get past days. Now, I don't believe he's going to jail or anything, but there is no doubt this thing is spiraling in the wrong direction, it would seem.
Yeah. Certainly I would say that. I mean, look, you had a spot at Texas. You didn't finish the season. You end up in Washington. You barely make it a week and a half. And now this, it's certainly it's upsetting because, having known Jonte since he was in high school, like you get to know the kids. You want to root for them and succeed, especially when they come down here. And, it feels like they have everything lined up to succeed, right? They're one of the top wide receivers in the state, one of the top wide receivers in the class. You're coming in with Arch Manning. You're expected to have that back and forth, that chemistry on the field. And for whatever reason, and that happens everywhere, but it just doesn't work out. Was it a misevaluation? Hindsight, clearly, at the time it was not. Jonte was in that conversation to being one of the top 5-10 wide receivers in the entire country. I mean, he's from a school that you like to get some more guys from at DeSoto too. It's hard to say no, especially when he's a vocal piece that's going to be, at the time, what you hope to be kind of a guy that will go out and market your program, right? You talk about, some of those guys that have large personalities and they back it up with their play. We're seeing two of them right now from DFW. It's Anthony Hill and they're Colin Simmons, right? They've done everything right on the field, off the field. That's what you hope. And when that happens, you strike gold where they come from. And we've talked about in the past year and a half, 2 years, how important it is for Texas to take care of Dallas, especially now that Oklahoma's trying to figure things out. Where was Oklahoma going when things were working? Well, it was Dallas. A&M. Now you got to deal with SMU, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Arkansas. if you can pick the best players out of DFW and have that be the representative of your team for the most part, you're going to have success in future recruiting cycles. And that's really where a lot of that emphasis of needing Jonte in the class came from, in my eyes. Just certainly unfortunate that it didn't work out on the field for the Longhorns.
Jonte was tight with Arch too. See,
Yep.
let's not forget that. I mean, that's why when I heard, started to hear the rumblings that he was leaning towards going into the portal, I was like, man, if he's just patient, like, Isaiah Bond's going to be gone. We didn't know what the deal was with Matthew Golden at the time, but like you're going to be probably one of the top 3, at worst, the number 4 receiver on this team in spring ball. And Arch, your guy, is going to be the quarterback. Like, just hang on a little bit longer. And, it didn't pass the smell test for me at that point when it went from rumblings to stuff's happening pretty quick. And for Sart to just essentially be like, you know what, I think we'll all be happier. We'll both be happier going our separate ways. For a guy that talented, there's obviously there's going to be stuff we don't know about, but that's why I can't call it an evaluation miss, because the guy's still talented. He's not any less of a football player today than he was yesterday, but it goes back to that football character piece is a really big part of it too. And what I hope, though, that doesn't happen is, because I know the Denver Harris stuff, people can do this with the North Shore program. You just start painting programs with a broad brush, like, right. Oh, they produce, bad guys or whatever. No, don't let one bad apple spoil the bunch. Like, Texas got Byron Murphy from DeSoto. They're going to continue to get quality guys from DeSoto, just like they've gotten quality guys from North Shore and where else. Rod, I can't think of one off the top of my head from Lamar that's turned out to not be very good. They've all been at least productive coming from Lamar. But that would be like, well, Lamar produces bad guys. Well, no, like Rod Babers and Drew Kelson and that Arakpo guy. Like, hey, Lamar's produced some pretty good players over here. So, yeah, just know, as long as nobody's painting it with a broad brush, then, hopefully Jonte gets it figured out. But typically these situations, Jonte, you look at a Jai Hall. Rod, you played with guys, whether it was Kendrick Turner or a Dorian McCullough or Robert Timmons. I mean, sometimes the most talented guys just can't get out. Eric Hardiman. Eric Hardiman was there after you were there, but sometimes the most talented guys just can't get out of their own way.
I believe, Kendrick Turner was that was why I believe he slipped and fell. We were doing 40 times. We were running inside, like we were running just 40s for the spring and getting times. I believe he slipped and fell and still ran like a low 4.4. He slipped at the beginning of it, fell, and then still got up and ran a 4.4. And everybody was like, what the? And he kind of just basically disappeared one spring. He was starting, actually. I believe he started. He was, as like the starter, I believe he was, if I still remember it correctly, for like stated for being starter for the spring game. And then he kind of disappeared. Like,
yeah.
Spring. Like, I mean, it just went MIA and had some issues after that. That dude was like extremely talented. Like, that dude was, and then Dylan McCullough was another guy. I remember Coach Akina telling me that guy's could win the Thorpe. Like, he was that good. One of the fastest players in college football at the time.
He might have been the fastest recruit in the country this year. I mean, last time I talked to Michael Griffin about this, there was a Texas backfield in 03-04. You had Selvin Young, you had Cedric Benson was in that backfield, and everybody at Texas at that time will swear up and down, no, as good as those guys were. I mean, Cedric Benson, one of the best, most productive running backs in the history of college football, and guys that were on the team will swear, no, Eric Hardiman was the most talented guy in that room, period.
Yeah. No, those cases, I mean, they unfortunately they're way too, it happens way too often. Mm-hmm. In every generation of players, they'll tell you about a couple of guys that were ridiculously talented, and not gonna say they wasted their talent, but they definitely didn't maximize that talent. And unfortunately, right now, it looks like Jonte's kind of headed down that path where he's not gonna get the most out of his talent. And we're talking about a guy that was ridiculously talented. All right, getting back to the questions here. Joshi Manning says, y'all just gave me PTSD. Remember the 2016 Kansas game? I said in my apartment, wanting to die. How far we've come. Yeah. What was the scene? Do I remember? Who was it? Was it Charles Amina? Who was it? That was like on the ground, literally like in agony, in tears, like having a temper tantrum because I get it.
I think that just resembled everybody else watching the game at home. No, I mean, lose to Kansas.
Yeah.
At least y'all had the option to change the channel. I was in Lawrence for that, so I had to sit there and suffer.
Oh man, yeah, no, but that's it. That really is. It is remarkable.
All 8,000 fans. What Jeff was it? It was more crowded at the beginning of the fourth quarter than it was at any point before. Didn't they open up the stadium to? They put out tweets and basically a public service is like, hey, like this game's pretty close. If you want to, the gates are wide open. No ticket required. Just come sit in the stands.
Memorial Stadium that day, it was like Black Friday. I was like, hey, everybody come on down. You're missing the big sale. Let's go. Like just letting people in the stadium.
No, I remember the players talking about how much they love Charlie Strong. And I'm like, y'all don't love Charlie Strong. Y'all ain't playing like it. Y'all don't play like y'all love that man. Y'all play like y'all hate that man. How did that was it playing? What's love got to do with it? I remember that. Yep.
All right. This though, the last trip to Lawrence for Sark in 2022 beat Kansas like they stole something.
That's true. Yeah. No, you're right about that. And you should always be beating Kansas like they stole, even though Kansas is a much improved program now. It ain't the same, but I get it. You'd always be frying up some Yardbird when you play the Kansas Jayhawks in football. In football, by the way. All right, let's get back to it. How about this one from Leo? Love hearing the news. Let's talk about this. Okay, let's open up to conversation to the other topic we wanted to get to. The nugget from my man Jerry Hamilton. Yeah. Great job over there on TexasFootball.com. Says, love hearing the news that Justice Terry will begin his college career playing the strong side edge position out of competition in that room between Simmons, Moore, and Burke. I like that too. I open it up, CJ. You also obviously are well knowledgeable about this move because Jerry pointed out to us when we were conversating and talking via the private chat. What are your thoughts about both you guys? Justice Terry starting out at that jack position specifically, just to start his career. I think ultimately is the guy that should end up playing multiple shades for you by the time he leaves Texas on that defensive front. But what are your thoughts about where he starts? Because I think it may be the move to get him in that NASCAR package as well. He could end up being that guy that you potentially bump inside from that Baron Sorrell role in the NASCAR package. But starting out at that jack position right now.
I like it. I think it's one way to get what is one of the more, if not the most talented defensive linemen in the country on the field early in his career. Of course, we kind of peg him to be a 3 to 5 technique guy in his career at Texas. To use him as that strong side buck, look, he's already has the size, right? He's about 6'4", 270 at the moment. He came into Texas actually about 260, so he's gained about 10 pounds or so. Of course, Jerry's done a great job with this report, but look, you look at the other sizes and weights of guys already at that position. Look, Baron Sorrell played it at 6'4", 252, 253 is what he weighed in at the Senior Bowl, and he did a heck of a job doing it. I'm just imagining a bigger, quicker body there right now thinking, okay, you're going to have a pretty substantial defensive line room that you could pick from. Of course, now you can look at Lance Jackson. Where does he fit in? You look at the guys that are already on roster right now with the Trey Moore, Colin Simmons. Do you move one or the other? How's Zena coming along? Because that was a guy that was pushing probably 255 or 260 towards the end of the season when they kept going back and forth to Atlanta. Just seeing how his body has changed during his redshirt year has been very encouraging as well. But for Justice Terry, I mean, look, you land the number one defensive lineman in the country. You got to have a plan for him, right? Could you imagine Colin Simmons not seeing the field last year, right? Some of these guys, you just got to have a package for, and this is a big piece as Texas, again, tries to get more of a foothold in Georgia. It's very easy to just go back and say, hey, Justice Terry, year one for us. Look at what he's doing, right? He was the best player from Georgia a year ago. Now we want you, and insert whichever Georgia player you want if you're the Texas staff. Come out to Texas. You see what we're doing. Look at Justice Terry, and we're going to have a heck of a development for Texas in the Deep South and Florida and Louisiana, whatever. But right now, I love the move.
I think right now, if you look at the interior, you've got your true 2 deep in spring with Travis Shaw, Cole Brevard, Alex January, and Hero Canoe. You're probably going to add another one. We'll see what the spring portal window looks like, but you'd like to see Texas add another one. So I think this is just figuring out. And to me, I'll credit the staff, mean, that's Kenny Baker, PK, everybody that deals with the defensive front. Throw Johnny Nansen in there too, because Johnny Nansen's got experience coaching defensive line. Figuring out, all right, what tools does Justice Terry have in his tool belt right now that can get him on the field as quickly as possible? And if they've determined that, hey, okay, he's got the pass rush tool, let's cultivate that. Let's let him work with the edges. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Rod. I think it's setting him up to, hey, at some point, once his body starts to catch up with the physical tools, then you can kick him inside in a NASCAR package. Or maybe, hey, you can keep him out wide, because the physical difference, it's much easier for a guy to hold point, a 265, 270-pound guy to hold point against, a 300-pound athletic offensive tackle, where maybe you can use some leverage and get the best of him, rather than, hey, go in there with a 330-pound guard in the SEC and, hey, we'll slap you on the backside and wish you the best of luck doing that. Just try your best, kid. So get him on the field, similar to what you did for Colin Simmons, but it's going to be different. Get him on the field in the most advantageous situation possible. I think that's what they're doing with Justice Terry. I think that's what this boils down to.
Yep, I agree. And that's exactly what they did with Colin Simmons. I mean, just weaponized him. I honestly, I think that the NASCAR package was not strictly to, but I think its main purpose was to weaponize him. And it did. I mean, basically, I would say 7 of his 9 sacks that came in that NASCAR package. I just think because I'm not sure which one Ethan Burke, I feel like Colton Vasek is a better natural pass rusher. Ethan Burke, but I could be off about that. I haven't watched enough film to say one way or the other, but I feel like that's the case. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, I kind of have a hot take on Colton Vasek. I think behind Colin Simmons, he's going to be your most efficient pass rusher, true pass rusher that you have on the roster next year. The question, and this has been the question dating back to his time at Westlake, is can he be healthy enough to stay on the field? Yeah. But again, he had about 30 pass rushes last year, 2 sacks, 6 pressures. If you extend that, and I know at some point he was playing against, some mop-up duty guys on the back end of games, but Texas relied on him a little bit for, I believe, 6 or 7 snaps against Ohio State. If that's what you're seeing in year 2, I love the height, I love the bend, I love the ability to get low off the edge and get around offensive tackles. That, to me, if you can keep him healthy and get him to a size in which you say this is perfect to what we need off the edge, he's your second best pass rusher in 2025. Yep.
That's why no, that's not a crazy. That's a hot take. It ain't a crazy take though, because I
say it's crazy, Rod. Because look, you just had Trey Moore with 7.5 sacks in the past 8 games of the year. He figured it out. But what I want to say is, I think that ceiling is a little different with Vasek over there.
See, I still think Ethan Burke's got the highest ceiling, other than Colin Simmons. I think Ethan Burke's got the highest ceiling of everybody else in that room, because I look at Ethan Burke. Number one, he's been healthier more than Colton Vasek has. But 2, to me, he's just a more complete player. I mean, is he elite against the run? Probably not. But he's a hell of a lot better now than he was in 2023, midway through when he started playing a lot. Or I guess he played early in 2023. But we've seen him improve as a run defender to the point where, he's not a liability to be out there against the run. And he can rush the passer a little bit. So I just like the reliability of Ethan Burke at this point. And I'm encouraged by Trey Moore at the end of the year, not just the numbers, but you can tell it was an adjustment for him, whereas on a UTSA schedule, maybe you might play 1 or 2 power conference programs a year, and everybody in the SEC has guys. Yeah. So you're going against top level competition every week. But I think we saw, once you probably got halfway through the season, we saw Trey Moore adjust to the speed of the game. And then his natural ability takes over once things start to slow down. So I'm encouraged by the trajectory Trey Moore was on.
Yeah, Ethan Burke's listed at 260. Do you keep him at that size, Jeff?
That's a good question. I don't let him probably get bigger than, to me, body type wise, he's similar to Charles Omenihu, which I don't know what Charles Omenihu weighs right now, but I know at Texas, Charles Omenihu was at his best playing right around 270. I felt like at 260, he was probably maybe a little too light, but I felt like once Charles got to, try to get up in the 280s for his pro day, I thought he lost a lot of that burst, a lot of the BGO, the stuff that made him an NFL prospect. And I think might have actually hurt his draft stock a little bit. I think right in that 170 or the 270 range, I think for Ethan Burke is on the money.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are too far off I mean, you're kind of basically saying, Jeff, which I don't disagree with, that Burke's a better all-around kind of player. But I think Vasek, in terms of pass rushing ability, I do seem to think he penetrates and gets in the backfield a lot. I just think he's kind of, I would say, I think pass rushing ability, a lot of it is natural. I think he's got a lot of that natural bend. So I think if you want the NASCAR package for me, he might be the guy I look at bumping inside. Because he got the size to go with it, unless he can't stay healthy. And then I think Justice Terry might be another alternative for you to bump inside. I mean, Burke could do it. Burke did it actually a couple of times in the NASCAR package too. So I'm not saying he can't do it. But if you were trying to get all your best, the whole point is it's basically an Avengers package. It's all your superheroes on the field at one time. You got all your, and last year DBs were like that was one of your deepest positions. So you got you had Makuba out there and Jade inside and Taff out there. I mean, it was just, and then he started moving pieces around at the end. And then you had Anthony Hill out there with Colin Simmons. Sometimes they would have both of them playing like linebacker positions, moving those guys around. It's a magnificent package. And I think the whole purpose of it is I just want to get my most impactful, havoc-minded players on the field. And I wonder which one of those guys creates the most havoc is probably what I'm talking about.
Rod, I'll tell you who because they're close to the same size. I'll tell you who Colton Vasek reminds me of, and it's not just because he's had trouble staying healthy like the guy I'm going to mention, but a guy you played with, Brian Pickrell. Brian Pickrell, from the time he got to campus, wasn't probably a great all-around defender, but just in a room of really good pass rushers, might have been the best natural pass rusher in that group.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got to think he's in there at one point with Tim Crowder, Brian Robinson, Corey Redding, Michael Williams. There were some really good rushers, but Brian Pickrell, he just couldn't stay healthy. His body just let him down. I hope that's not going to be what it is with Colton Vasek, that at some point he can be on the field long enough to sustain these stretches over, a full season.
Yep. I just love the way they're using Justice Terry. Does show me though that, and I've talked about this, they want more multiplicity and they want more players who are versatile, hybrid pieces for him. Justice Terry is that, in my opinion, kind of where, and most of it'll be just based on his development, kind of where his body starts and where his body is in 3 years. Because that we really don't know. I mean, we just guys who have bodies like that as teenagers, you really just don't really know where it's going to go. So I can see early on, and I love what you said, Jeff. Let's just see what he does. What does he do well now? What does he do well right now? We're going to teach him and develop him into being an all-around NFL caliber player. What does he do well right now? How can we get him out there right now? And I think it's just he's probably just a hell of a pass rusher because he's just a freak athlete to have to deal with.
I think this conversation that we're having with the edges, you could have with maybe every position on the defensive side of the ball except for defensive tackle. Is that crazy to say that, look, you have, a front end guy or two starting already, and then you're starting to look at, all right, well, how do we get this freaky freshman on the field, and how many guys do they have to jump ahead to get into that too deep, right? Safety, we've talked about it with Jordan Johnson-Rubel and Xavier Filsaime. I mean, how do they get on the field with the two guys that are already there? But they're also fending off two really talented five-star guys. At cornerback, Rod, I mean, look, you could go down the list. Who makes the jump of what was the freshman class in 2024? Is it a Santana Wilson? What does Wardell Mack look like? There's all sorts of other pieces that you could kind of fit in and say, okay, well, is it Kobe Black's job to lose, or could Cade Phillips or Caleb Chester make a run? And I think that's really encouraging. And beyond anything, linebacker, I think, could be, and again, this is where we're getting into the weeds of the offseason, but I think linebacker might be in the best overall shape of any position defensively. When you look at Anthony Hill obviously being your focal point, how do you use him next to a Leon Glafau? How do you pair the two together, but then also throw in Brad Spence and a Ty Anthony Smith, who he's going to be up about 225, maybe upper 220s by the time the spring ball comes rolling around. That's going to be a 30-pound increase from this time a year ago, essentially. We saw him in space, and I think that's one of the things that I've been harping on with the linebackers right now is, well, how do you improve the backpedaling, right? How do you improve when you can't just go forward, find ball, get ball? How do you improve coverage? Ty Anthony Smith had that. Remember his interception against Vanderbilt? I was sitting there thinking, okay, that looked like the Ty Anthony Smith that I saw down in Houston playing 7-on-7, but as like the center field safety. But then you also add in, and of course, Jonathan Cunningham's in the mix. developmentally a ways away, but Elijah Barnes coming in and starting his Texas career already at 240 pounds. And this is a guy that ran 10.9 at Dallas Skyline. So I love the pieces that Texas has right now at linebacker. How do they move and develop in the spring? Of course, this is after losing David Benn to Mo Blackwell, some guys that were really instrumental in terms of special units, situational football. But I love the pieces they have at that linebacker group right now.
Mm-hmm. I think I love the start of the point you made, CJ, and I think the key to how do you get all these young athletes, these really dynamic young players on the field, when we already have established veterans that are going to be out there, frontline guys. It's diversity of personnel groupings, right? It's how much variety you have. The big nickel allowed Jelani McDonald to get out there, in addition to your rotations, right? The dime package that we hadn't seen prior to last season, that allowed you to put more of those young DBs out there and showcase them, right? The NASCAR package, as we've been talking about ad nauseum, it allowed you to get a young Colin Simmons and showcase him. I think the more variety you have, you're running, when they had their 3-4 and they ran their 3-4 a lot, they put Leon Lafau and they put the extra linebackers out there and allow him to shine a little bit. So I just think, remember that their 3D tackle package, where they put 3D tackles out there as their 3-down linemen. I think the more variety you have, then you can showcase that those different, I don't call them hybrids, but different players with the different unique skill sets. You can showcase them and weaponize them in different ways. So I think they do have that kind of what you're talking about, CJ, with that first world problem. How do I get these young players on the field? And I think the more variety you have in personnel groupings, the better. Same thing on offense. Same thing on offense too. I totally believe that. That's how you do it.
Easiest way to get a lot of these defensive guys on the field is say, hey, go score 70 points, because I know the defense is going to allow more than 30 in that instance. Just blow everybody out, and you'll get whoever you want on the field.
That's fair.
I'll give you a comp for Justice Terry, kind of hey, what would maybe a best case scenario for his Texas career be based on other Texas guys? I was just thinking about Lamar Houston, who came to Texas as an athletic, supposedly power and strong side defensive end at 260. I just looked it up. Rod, Lamar Houston was 305 at the combine.
Crazy.
And he was a lighter defensive tackle, but was so damn athletic that he just won at the point of attack. But in the NFL, somehow he's an outside linebacker and played in the 270s. So one of those guys that just his body can just kind of go. He's got the natural athleticism, and his body can just kind of go and morph to whatever position he's playing. I don't know if Justice Terry's got that kind of genetics, but I think he could be taking that Lamar Houston path where it's all right, we'll start him outside, and eventually he's just going to be a 295-pound just mismatch on the interior.
I like that. I feel like Georgia does that with some of its guys. They're just nah, we don't move this guy around. Malcolm Roach did some of that. Remember his body? And then he kind of settled in. Yeah.
he might be at top of the list of most misused guys I've ever watched, Rod.
That's fair. I agree with that. That's probably so. Maybe it's more he was just mismanaged more so than.
But to your point, he was a 270-pound guy that would play over the nose sometimes and then drop back at middle linebacker. And you're saying, just put him at the edge. I mean, he was a darn good football player. It just, there's some frustration with how he's used, perhaps.
I remember that Maryland game where he's lined up 30 yards off the ball, and Maryland just running jet sweeps and trying to make Malcolm Roach. I love my guy Roach, but they did him dirty that day.
Oh, speaking of low points, losing to Maryland twice. Oh, interim head coach, jet sweep over and over again. Wasn't that a true freshman that they kept doing that with? Oh man, talk about low points. That was one. Talk about yelling and screaming. I did a lot of cussing that day. All right, let's get to another question.
I still wish I had the text from Rod from the night in Provo in 2013. I still wish I had those because, man, I'm telling the audience, man, your boy Rod B was on one that night.
Oh man, I was on the sideline losing it, and I wasn't the only one because we found out what happened to Manny Diaz after that. Yeah. So
the difference between you and Manny Diaz was you had a job the next day, and he didn't.
I feel bad because Manny Diaz is a good dude, man. I remember Manny Diaz is a good guy, and I'm glad he's doing well now. But oh man, that was ugly. That was when we found out who. But you know what? I tell you what. Now seeing in the NFL, we're seeing guys that basically were embarrassed you, and then go to the NFL and still have success. Then you don't feel that bad about it. So
Kyle Van Noy and Taysom Hill are still cashing checks.
Oh, Taysom Hill's still balling, and he still don't. You don't even know what position he plays half the damn time.
Jamal Williams as his running back as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Last little nugget I'll throw into this, trip down, really a nightmare down memory lane here. Somewhere on here, I got a scar on my elbow, and that's after the 2021 Kansas loss. I took a solo trip to Rainey and I stumbled home, I guess. How that went. But Hoodie's got a hole still. Don't hop on those scooters after dark.
The solo trip out. That's how you know you was feeling bad. You're like, you know what? I'm going out by my damn self. You don't even text your friends. You're like, I'm going out. If I see somebody, I know it's cool. Oh, yeah, I remember.
I'm telling you, lone wolf in it is a lonely world.
Yeah. All right, we'll quit talking about bad times. All right, let's talk about good times. Spring game. Well, Roger wants to know, and I think a lot of people, so no spring games because of tampering. We don't know what the reason would be, but I believe it was Chip Brown yesterday that did report that there's a story that, because of really the rigors of the schedule more than anything. Texas playing a 16-game schedule, and then the rigors of, Texas obviously trying to play for a national title and play for conference championships, that would be the reason that Sark may consider altering or changing the spring game or spring schedule format. And that was reported on by Chip Brown. But nothing has been confirmed, but it's just because we were having the conversation yesterday, and Jeff, I believe you were on as well, talking about how every program has to have the serious conversation about spring games, whether it's about tampering, is that your concern, or whether it's about kind of what Sark is talking about here, the wear and tear of a now ever extending, growing college football season. The spring game may be one of those things that is more of a burden than a benefit for a lot of programs. And if that's the case, do you need a spring game? Obviously, our fans want a spring game, but that is part of the conversation. But we don't do. I mean, right now we assume Sark is going to have one, but we don't know.
My thing is, I would ask the fans, what's the bare minimum you're cool with seeing? Because from now on, you're probably going to get the bare minimum in spring games.
That's right.
Maybe you get a live quarter. Maybe you get some live situational stuff. Because I was thinking about this, Rod, and I'm with Sark. I'll go down the road with Sark of 16-game schedule. You got guys that are really beat up right now, guys that need to rest, right? Everybody needs to work, but you got to limit the contact some guys have. At the same time, I don't want to have several spring scrimmages and get my young guys beat up. And, I know everybody's at risk of injury, but I just can't substitute like, all right, these guys are going to get the hell beat out of them for 15 practices, and then we're gonna go into summer. I think it's an across the board deal for Sark. Like, you really, CJ, you mentioned this yesterday, or maybe it was this morning with me, you and Bobby, and I thought you made a really good point that, hey, you're going to do stuff probably out of character for Sark from a football standpoint, from how he was brought up in the game, but you're going to limit full contact. Maybe you have one close scrimmage that's like a full contact tackle to the ground scrimmage. Everything else is going to be thud. It's quick whistles. It's, hey, get your work in, get done, go home, and then really kind of ramp it back up for full camp. Because I think there are going to be some guys like a Trey Wisner that maybe wasn't counting on getting as much run as he got. Maybe you need to give Trey Wisner until you get back to camp to get him up and running again. And some of these defensive linemen and offensive linemen that, man, if you're a guy like DJ Campbell, I don't have it in front of me how many snaps DJ Campbell played, but I mean, you're talking about Trevor Goosby probably didn't plan on playing as much as he did. Campbell, that's a lot of snaps. So just give guys, just the bodies need time to rest because the human body's only made to absorb so much contact before things start breaking.
And that's a lot where my brain was going is how do you protect guys who need live reps while also giving them live reps? And to your point, I mean, how different was it 2022 when you lose Isaiah Nayor and Junior Angela in the same scrimmage in fall camp? But look, that's going to be your starting guard and what is expected to be your number 2 wide receiver. How different is Texas this year with a CJ Baxter who gets injured in one of those, fall camp scrimmages or whatnot? That to me is kind of how you have to juggle the spring. You need these guys to get as many reps as possible, and it comes to development from year 1 to year 2 or beyond, and et cetera, right? That's the point of spring football is get extra looks, understand where your team is, and then now you can address those needs in the spring portal. But you don't fully grasp what your team needs are if, well, you don't get those scrimmages, or if you're not going all the way out with, good on good in live situations. It's just too much harder to sit there and kind of guess what kind of group of guys you have when the pads are on, the lights are bright, and you need them to go hit somebody. Rod, you can talk for it. It's different to sit there in a closed circuit up at Denny's and have a good 7-on-7 session. But until you're, scrimmaging or whatnot, whether it be in the bubble at Denny's or at DKR, you got to figure out, okay, the pressure's on. There's folks in the stands now. I got to go play football. But also, as a coach, the worst thing you want to do is play football for no reason, right? These games aren't going to hoist a national championship or get you to an SEC title. You got to look at your program, understand what's the best, how do you juggle it, and move forward from that. The one thing I hope doesn't happen is that this spring season, or what's available to the fans and to us media, turns into what the NFL Pro Bowl has become. And that's just 7-on-7 with some touch and some, maybe we'll get an inside zone period. But, to the point in what we're talking about here is you got to protect your players. You got to understand what's best for the program. And that also goes to the tampering section of what Matt Rule was talking about. Yeah. It's quite the conundrum and spot to be in if you're Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah. No, I think ultimately it's one of those things. I think as time goes on, we get into revenue sharing. It becomes more like the NFL, more like a business. I do think the spring game, I think you'll have fewer and fewer spring games for these big time college programs, and maybe for all programs, period.
I think real quick though, Rod, I think the other thing we've got to consider too is as late as the season ran, because Sark gave the guys 2 weeks off before they started winter conditioning when they came back. The portal opens April 16th. So that's kind of your time where you got to have spring ball wrapped up. Right. So not only guys can enter the portal, but so you can work the portal, because we just got done talking about some of the needs this team still has. So time is not on Sark's side right now. So you could, I don't know, CJ, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you go to, maybe you're doing 3 practices a week, or hell, maybe there's some weeks in there where you might do 2 practices a week, just to limit how much wear and tear your guys are having.
Yeah. I know. Like I said, it's. I agree with CJ. I don't know right now. I haven't heard anybody with a good solution. And
the more I think about it, Rod, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, and I think for coaches, their easy go-to is, I don't need the spring. Like, I don't need the spring game, so let me get rid of the spring game. And then people will quit tracking my spring schedule. The only reason y'all care about the spring schedule is because y'all want the spring game. When's the spring game going to be? They're like, well, if I eliminate the spring game, then y'all will quit asking about my spring schedule. And basically, I want control of that, because, like you said, now you want to limit the amount of wear and tear the guys are going to have, and you want to limit the amount of impact and obviously the amount of tackling you're going to have during the spring. So full padded practices, that kind of thing too. So I'm with you. I think it's something that I think all programs around the country, big and small, have to consider. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery. Before we move on, we'll answer some more questions here before we get to the end of our live stream. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, folks. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local specs, so give it a try. Also, we know not only is Flat Creek responsible for some of the best wines currently on the market, premium wines, like their vintage wine, Super Texan. I like the Pinot Grigio is really good. The rosé is fantastic. It is very refreshing. My wife loves it, and her mom loves it. And over the holidays, my mom, our entire family got a chance to enjoy a lot of Flat Creek wine. But it's also a gorgeous venue that has barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend there at Flat Creek Estate Winery. So just minutes from downtown Austin, perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. As a matter of fact, we had a member of the Owen Texas football family recently get engaged there at Flat Creek Estate Winery. So it is a great facility, and it's a great venue for all types of occasions. So give them a shout today, or you can reach out to them at flatcreekestate.com to find out more details, not only about their great wine selection, but about their venue and reservations there as well. That's flatcreekestate.com. All right, let's move on, answer some more questions here. I like this question. This is a good one from Frank. What position coach would be the hardest to replace if they were to leave for Texas?
Oh, boy.
Good question. Yeah, who's the hardest to replace? Not necessarily who's the best or the most coveted, but who's the toughest to replace in that group? And take Sark out of it, I guess, because Sark is on play calling, assistant coaches, coordinators.
My initial brain goes straight to Pete Kwiatkowski, but if we're sticking straight to position coaches, look, offensive line's important. Texas has done a heck of a job accumulating the bodies that they have, the talent that they have, and making sure that they're staying on campus right now. I think Flood is there, but if you're looking at just every coach, and I took coordinator out of it because otherwise, look, if Sark's the guy calling the offense and we're taking him out, well, the next most important guy is the guy who's had a pretty elite defense the last 2 years, and that to me is Pete Kwiatkowski. But taking the coordinators out of it to an extent, it's got to be Kyle Flood in the sense that he's the guy that's gotten your offensive line to where where it has been and where it is and where it's going after what we've seen over the last 10 years, where it wasn't pretty recruiting offensive linemen at Texas.
To me, I would say Kyle Flood because of the relationship between he and Sark. The fact that they're in lockstep in offensive ideology. Kyle Flood it's easier for Kyle Flood to recruit because he knows the kind of guy Sark wants. And they're on the same page with that. So I think that makes that process easier. I don't see very many times where they're going to butt heads in a recruiting meeting because Kyle Flood's bringing somebody to the table that Sark doesn't want, or vice versa. There's going to be a lot in lockstep there. So I would say Kyle Flood. I would also say Johnny Nansen because of this. PK is a little more laid back, not a fiery type guy, more introspective. But what made Jeff Choate so good with PK and what makes Johnny Nansen so good, they are that fire and brimstone guy. That's like the yin and yang. You got to have I hate saying a good cop, bad cop, but if you got one guy that's kind of keeps to himself and is pretty level-headed, yeah, on that side of the ball, you need some intensity. I think we saw that. Rod, goes back to our guy, Will Muschamp. You need somebody that can light a fire under people. And I think that's Johnny. I think that's Johnny Nansen. So I was worried about when Jeff Choate left, but Sark and PK did a hell of a job getting Johnny Nansen over from Arizona.
Yeah, because you can see PK's demeanor is kind of laid back, right? You can kind of tell that when you get a chance to talk to PK. He's kind of laid back. So yeah, that does need to be that someone who brings like you said, the fire, brings the energy, and he can be one of those guys as long as you got that balance in the coaching staff. So I like both you guys. I agree with Kyle Flood, by the way. Once you as an offensive mind find your O-line guy as a coordinator, you don't let that guy go. Usually those guys stay together for years. The O-line guy and the offensive coordinator, play caller, that's Sark. So I think that's him and Kyle Flood. I'll throw out one though, Torrey Becton as a dark horse right there, because there are a lot of people that have been talking to me about him and how influential he is behind the scenes with culture and with the guys too. And honestly, look at the combine. Guys performing well now.
Mm-hmm.
The conditioning. Guys looking good to combine now.
Hey, good news. And hey, this is a little bit ways away, right? The combine begins, I believe, what is it, the 25th or 26th? Mm-hmm. OTF will be represented. I'll be making the trip up there. I'm excited for it. First time in Indianapolis. If anybody's got food wrecks, whatever there is to do in Indianapolis, I honestly have never been. Don't really have a whole lot of interest other than the combine. Please let me know because I'm excited for it. And there's going to be hopefully double-digit Longhorns once again. There was 11 last year. All 11 got drafted. If 12 get invited, if 13 get invited, that'll be a school record. So I'm excited for it. Shoot me some wrecks. No scooters, Joe. What's the fun in Indy without a scooter?
I'm sure that actually by now you'll get some good recommendations. I know some folks actually been to Indy a lot for the combine, so I might shoot you a couple too. I don't ever go, but I know a lot of people who basically make it a annual thing to try to get up there. To the
I'll say this, Rod, your Torrey Becton point. It's because not to go back down the road of yesteryear, but there was a long time around here where strength conditioning was just an S show. Like it was either disorganized, guys weren't on the same page. Mm-hmm. It's a personality conflict with the strength coach. That's not the case now. I mean, you know how I know Torrey Becton's doing a good job? I don't ever hear about him. That's how your strength coach is doing a good job.
That's the truth. I agree with you on that. You're right. Nobody talks about strength and conditioning in Texas anymore. It just understood they're doing a good job because it's part of development, but a huge part of development. Because in the offseason, nobody spends more time with the guys than that guy.
How about this? Condition is like being physical, right? When you stop talking about it and I see it, you don't have to say anything about it because I know my eyes aren't lying to me.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's a great point. Like I think Longhorn fans are looking at the product on the field. Paul here with the question. With the two deep looking, I think we got into this earlier, so we don't have to spend that much time on it. But with the two deep looking like Cole Brevard in January or Shaw and Hero mix and match the nose and the three technique, however, and just as likely the fifth now is Texas still going into the portal for a 4D tackle. Jeff, I think you've.
Yes, because you're one injury away from a hell of a lot of inexperience, So yeah, it's not even an insurance policy. I just, hey, would you rather have, throw Melvin Hills or Myron Charles or Josiah Sharma to the Wolves before they might be ready, or get a guy that's got some experience? Mm-hmm. And if one of those three youngsters beats out an experienced guy, then so be it. Yep. But I want as many obstacles. This is going to sound mean, but it's the development piece for the big guys. I want as many obstacles between true freshmen in the field as possible. And if they clear those obstacles, then hey, you're just a freak, and so be it. We'll play you, but I want them to have to earn it.
I agree with that. That's a good point. CB wants to know, what is the starting O-line lineup in 2025? I'll throw that one to you, CJ.
Yeah. Look, it's going to be interesting to see, where does Cole Hudson fit into the mix? Does he become the center? Does he stick at a guard position? Because I think right now you don't want to move DJ Campbell from the right guard spot, right? He's the only one that has, or at least is returning as a starter. To bump him again, it's almost like you're changing positions. You got a brand new guy there. So you got to start with who's returning. Who do you know you got to work backwards in a way, right? I think, beyond where my brain is at right now, it's Trevor Gooseby left tackle. I think it's going to be Nato at left guard. I think Cole Hudson will be your center now. And again, is Cole Hudson too good to not play center? Is he a guy that wins out that left guard spot? Is Daniel Cruz a guy that wins the center position, or Connor Robertson? We'll have to wait and see. And then you got DJ Campbell at right guard, and Brandon Baker is going to be my right tackle. But that's basically how I view it. Again, it's February 5th, and hopefully there's spring ball for us to kind of figure out how the rest of this stacks up. But again, Gooseby, Nato Umeozulu, Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell, Brandon Baker is kind of where I'm sitting right now.
All right.
I give that a thumbs up.
All right, we're all in unison.
I like that. No, I agree with that too. And I'm with you, CJ. I hope we get a chance to break that down during the spring. PLL Superfan Forever says, do you guys think KJ Lacey can challenge for the backup quarterback spot? Kind of get back to what Jeff said about true freshmen. I like Trey Owens though, man. I'm a Trey Owens fan. I was before the spring game and everybody saw him, and I still am. I think he's a good player. What are you guys' thoughts about the backup quarterback competition?
Just let him compete for it. I mean, Trey Owens wasn't the backup last year, so that job technically should be open, right?
Good point.
So, man, let him go compete for it. I mean, hey, Arch got to campus and he and Malik Murphy competed for that job. So yeah, I'd let the two youngsters. That's one position, Rod, where I know there's a lot of mental gymnastics you have to do when you're dealing with quarterbacks, but I don't want my quarterbacks to get comfortable. I want them to have to, even if it's like, for lack of a better term, like if you have to reinvent your edge constantly, like I want my quarterbacks to feel like they've got to prove something every day.
Yeah, I like that. It's good stuff. How about this one from MJF? If Baxter is healthy and starts, does Trey Weister go back to shining in special teams next year? Who are the candidates to be gunners? First of all, the 2 parts here. Good question, MJF. What do you guys think about Trey Weister's role, assuming and knocking on wood, hope everything works out that TJ Baxter comes back completely healthy? What's Trey Weister's role if that happens? And who are the gunners? Because gunner was an issue this year. You didn't have the dynamic gunners you had a couple of years ago when Keelan Robinson was on one side doing a great job for you. Keaton Crawford, I believe, was one of your other gunners too. What are your thoughts, guys? This is a good question.
That's a great question.
I think for the first part, I think Wisner's too valuable now as your number 2 tailback.
Yep.
To have him be on all the special teams, I just think he's too valuable.
Yeah, you're telling a 1,000-yard rusher, hey, you had a great year, but hey, back to track and punts, right? I don't think, with the way that Texas has recruited, you have enough skill guys. You got enough speed on the outside to find someone eager and hungry enough to find the field in that instance to begin with, especially if you claim the culture that we've heard about is as good as it is. These guys should be eating up at the opportunity to get on the field as young freshmen or sophomores who just got their red shirt off, saying, okay, let me find a way, a la Trey Wisner, to get on the field and earn the respect and trust of the coaching staff. I think you look at what happened when you lost one of your top 2 running backs in 2024. You say, okay, my 2 running backs for 2025, if they're hurt, it's because, look, they just had a 300-pound guy tackle them between the tackles. Nothing else is going to deter them from playing on the field in 2025. So I look at CJ Baxter. I look at Trey Wisner. Shoot, whoever your running back 3 is, and I think right now it's going to be Jarrett Gibson, all 3 of them, come take a seat. You now have 6 or 7 capable bodies at the running back spot who can go chase punts, kicks, whatever it might be, and be just fine.
I mean, I know Roshan played a lot of special teams, but Bijan's one of the biggest freaks I've ever seen, just because, I mean, even he wanted to play through a broken forearm. You know, like you had to drag him off the field. He was incredibly durable. So, yeah,
his neck just snapped in half.
Yeah.
I still remember that. That was crazy.
I can't just relegate Trey Wisner to covering kicks. I with the Gunners, I think like maybe Xavier Filsaime, could he be a guy?
I like that. I was thinking that too, Jeff. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. I look at those young DBs. Hey, if Cade Phillips isn't a starting corner, then
hey, it's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
The guys,
Ryan Niblett, perhaps.
That's another good one. I like that.
Ryan Niblett, get that speed on the outside and say, "Go get ball."
That's good.
Yeah,
I like that one.
You've got enough guys that have good size speed ratios. Your coverage unit should be the best in the country. We're right in that discussion. There's no reason for them not to be.
Yep. Yeah. Like Trey, with the culture of meritocracy, Trey Wisner will not be relegated.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, because Starks to big about rewarding guys who show up for me. He's like, you showed up for me, I'm going to reward you for that. We know Starks kind of loyal to that extent, which I as a player, I appreciate. All right. I also appreciate our friends over at South Point. So let me give them a shout out. Then we'll come back, take one more question, and then we'll revisit the Max Wright commitment. Then we'll say goodnight to you guys. But first, let's say thank you to our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over right now, folks, you can get a great deal. Matter of fact, you can get straight to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. There are over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including a great selection of Ram 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. And right now, they have a great deal happening with over 50 Ram 2500s, all marked down with huge savings over at South Point Dodge. So you can go to southpointdodge.com and you can see their inventory there, or you can go see it for yourself in person off of I-35 in South Austin. You can go check out their inventory there as well. So anything you need, whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. It is Austin's automotive everything. So thank you very much to our friends over at South Point Dodge at southpointdodge.com. All right, let's hit the Max Wright commitment just really quickly for those who may have missed the beginning of the show. Then we'll hit the last super chat of the night. Then we'll say good night here. But Max Wright, Longhorns get a commitment from an offensive lineman in the 2026 class. Looking ahead, big humans. CJ, he certainly fits the description of the motto that Longhorns like to apply to the trenches.
Yeah, 6'6" and a half, 6'7", 284 pounds is what he was listed at on the Texas Junior Day, January 20th. First offensive lineman in what is expected to be a pretty large offensive line haul in 2026. Of course, the state of Texas has plenty of talent as well, but a guy with super lengthy arms, great wingspan at 6'7", Rod, we talked about it. We watched the film earlier. He can get rather low for his size early in his career, which is a great sign for how his hip flexibility and kind of mobility will be able to grow moving forward. Moves bodies very well, and I think at his size will only improve, of course, as he adds weight and flexibility. So good start to the class, can play tackle, can play guard. I think he has the wingspan to test at tackle. So we'll see, of course, and Britt, I'll get to your question about Jackson Christian. Look, he's been on campus for, I believe, 3 weeks now. So look, we're still finding little tidbits back, but knowing Jackson Christian, where he came from, he's going to be a guy that's a great program guy, going to buy into what the coaches ask of him, and he'll do just fine with his head down, keep working. That's just who he is. He's an all business guy. Jeff, I don't know if you got to speak with him a whole lot during his recruitment. that guy has two modes. It's really like football serious, and then it's just serious. So that's the type of prospect that he was at the time.
Yeah, blue collar guy from the Golden Triangle. Give me as many Golden Triangle guys as I can get on the roster, because those guys, they typically come out from the mud. They typically got a little bit of grit to them. So I like those guys from PNG, go all the way down to Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, the Earl Thomases of the world. Give me more of those guys. I say this about Max Wright though. I think of offensive linemen the way we've seen franchises over the years in the NFL, like the Packers or the Patriots, the way they think about quarterbacks. I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm left wanting at that position just because I don't have enough bodies. Like the more shots I get, the more I'm probably going to make. So just load up on offensive line. That's a position where I never want to be short of bodies. So just load up any chance you get. Like I said, it's not only a good year. I don't think we mentioned this, CJ. It's not only a good year in state, but you got some really good leads out of state too. Texas does. So it could be we're talking about probably being upwards of 6. It could be a really, really good class.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see how many actually lock in official visits. When we start looking at who's already in, right? That June 13th week is Felix Ojo, Toa Katoa, Zayden Crimpen. And then June 20th, well, it's Nick Robertson, now Max Wright, the Texas commit, and potentially Samuel Rosenborough out of Florida. So, look, that's already 6 guys locked in. If that number gets up to about 10, 12, 13, I don't think I'd be surprised at all.
Yeah. What you should hope for is that a couple of guys see the writing on the wall. Like, look, if I want a spot in this class, I can't wait till my OV. I've got to pull the trigger and late March, early April. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good stuff, guys. Let's hit Eric's super chat. Thank you, Eric, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Great question here to end things on. What up, fellas? Appreciate y'all as always. Rod B with the D trying to run more man coverage. How does that affect a guy like Taft, who isn't the most physically gifted but extremely smart? It's a great question, Eric. Thank you for the super chat. There are ways to hide as long as you don't have multiple coverage liabilities in the secondary, which Texas won't. There are ways to hide guys who are not necessarily coverage specialists, like a guy like Michael Taft. So you can have it where if he is manned up, he's manned up on a tight end, or he ends up, manned up on the back somehow. You can have him as the free guy, the whole player a lot of times, or you can have him as your center field safety, where he's not necessarily in man coverage, but he's the help defender. So he can be the help defender a lot of times, or you have him manned up on, like I said, a less explosive threat or less lethal threat, like a tight end or a running back. So there are ways to hide him. But I think Taft actually was decent in coverage. Now, they played mostly 80% zone coverage. So it wasn't a lot of time where he was exposed in coverage. But I agree. They're a great question. They do want to play more man. That's the kind of athletes they're recruiting. So I just think they will, I don't say hide him. There are ways to not expose him in coverage. But the defenses will look to try to get him manned up. They'll just try to go empty. I go empty, and I get him, and y'all manned up, and I get him down. Matter of fact, I believe that's what Arizona State did, right? When they had Scatterbo out there. They would just got Scatterbo out there and just chunked it deep to him. You have more teams, I think, that will try to do that to Taft, ultimately. But usually, if they're in man, they'll have them matched up. They're playing cat defense. They'll have them matched up on a running back. He's supposed to win those. Yeah. All right, he's supposed to win those with his running backs and tight ends. So that's what I think they'll try to do.
I think the other way you can mix up some of your coverage, CJ's got my wheels turning. Could Ty Anthony Smith be that dime linebacker that we thought Maurice Blackwell was becoming, but it never really materialized the way that I thought it would? Yeah. Could Ty Anthony Smith be that guy to where, hey, on third down, it doesn't matter if Ty Anthony Smith gets manned up on somebody, we know he can cover. So that's another way you can, hide Michael Taft a little bit.
I love it. It's like a nickel and a half. Because he's like a hybrid for you, hybrid DB / linebacker. I love that idea too. It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about having more variety and diversity on defense will allow you to play more of those guys. So good question there, Eric. And certainly Michael Taft is, he's a leader in that secondary. So he's going to be on the field. That's why if you're going to play more man, you got to do it with Taft Daddy on the field because, he's going to be the guy that's kind of the the guy controlling and navigating that secondary for you. All right. Thank you guys for all the super chats. Really appreciate it. Thank you to all of our sponsors as well. Thank you to SouthPointDodge.com. Thank you to FlatCreekEstate.com as well. And thank you to Dr. Brett Robin, Austin's orthopedic specialist. We appreciate him sponsoring our Wednesday night live stream. Got to get up for Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. We appreciate Matthew. Oh, let me announce this. Because Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday. So usually we have a live stream on Super Bowl Sunday. We have a live stream on Sunday, but it's Super Bowl Sunday. So we're going to do a halftime because the halftime is so long. If you don't want to watch Kendrick Lamar or you want to watch Kendrick Lamar while you're watching us, we'll do like a halftime. And I'm sure Matthew is thrilled about this as an Eagles fan. We'll do a halftime live stream and we'll be quick about it though. We'll get it in like 30 minutes. Halftime usually really long. Exactly. Halftime usually really long for the Super Bowl. So we'll come in, talk a little ball on Sunday, but get out so that we can all watch the second half of the Super Bowl. So that's how we're gonna do it. So halftime will probably start. I think the Super Bowl is usually around 5:30 or something. So it'll probably be around 7, something like that. So we're gonna do a halftime. Start at halftime. That's when we'll start our live stream. Just say heads up to everyone out there. All right. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. We appreciate him. We appreciate all you guys for joining us. Tomorrow, you got Coffee and Football, 8 a.m. If we missed any of your questions, we apologize for that. Direct them to the guys over at Coffee and Football. They'll be more than happy to answer them. Or you can throw them to us at the Winning Drive. The Winning Drive tomorrow will be around 3:15. We'll be starting the Winning Drive with CJ Vogel, Coach Bob Shipley, and myself. Who knows? Jeff may drop by too. Who knows? All right. Thank you guys. And until next time, for Jeff and for CJ and for Matthew behind the scenes, hook 'em horns.